Friends, ever noticed in your after save events you can't actually go is field dirty and then react on changes to your fields in your after save event? Bit annoying, right? Let's show you how to actually flag your field changes so you can actually know if they were changed in your after save event. So, before we really dive into the code here, let's a little background and how Aptify sort of processes. So, when you open an Aptify record, the GE loads its state. So that's its current state. And then you have its active state. So there's essentially, when you have a GE record over, there's sort of two versions of it. You've got what was loaded initially, and then you've got sort of the live state. So as you're making modifications to the live state, you now know if something has changed or not. So when you hit save on the record, what happens between the save and the after save is the save commits the data to the database and, in an effect, reloads your GE object. So now your live data is now your current data, and now you've got a new live data. So effectively, now once you're on the after save event, you don't have that previous state anymore. And this is why in after save you can't just go the field you want dot is dirty and then execute something if that value had changed. So how do we get around this? So the way I do it has worked very, very successfully for me is I create a custom event definition that will on before save. So before the data gets committed to the database and it reloads, it sends a custom temporary field on the GE, which then persists to the after save. Now, very important here, it will persist to the after save if you're passing in if you're in synchronous context, so the GE is the GE, or when you're passing to the async server, you are passing the GE object. If you're doing the little trick to save space and all that, and when just passing the ID into your async server, this don't work. So big thing, if you're doing this, passing this down to the async server and that, you must pass the GE object. Just a heads up for that one. Okay, so event definition. If you haven't done one before, the event definitions, custom event definitions, are additional script that we put on top of essentially the base events. So before save, after save, validation. One of the best examples of this one is order shipped. Order shipped is an after save event that goes if the order is shipped, and created a custom definition for that one. Aptify has put that one more as a base one now, but that's besides the point. But essentially, same idea here. So let's take a look at this. So process pipelines, event definition. So step one, we're going to create our before save event definition. So I've given it a name here, before save. I personally always like to put the entity and the event type in the name. So I always know what we're selecting, and then the actual sort of descriptive name that we're doing, give it a category. Scope for us is going to be the entity. And our base event that we're sort of building off of is before save. And we're going to use post process because so before save, then run ours. And this is localized to just persons. Now, if we go over to the script, here's where our magic is happening. So I got a little couple exception publishes out here. These test only, just so it publishes out so we can see some of the actual data. So step one, we are removing my custom field. Why? So what can happen if you're not careful in this? You can create yourself an endless loop. So if, which happens a lot here and there, with Aptify on after save. If this happens, you might need to go do something and then update that record again with, say, maybe a timestamp flag, or because you've gone and do this, now this value on the record has to update. Now, if you just take the context of the GE you're in, which has this flag set to true or whatever value you're setting it to, and then you do a save after you've updated that other field, well, now that flag, if this part isn't done correctly, will persist through. And so when you after save again, this flag is going to be valid, true. And then it's going to kick off that after save again. So be careful here. So because I'm doing this on the before save of the record, effectively what I'm doing here is I am reevaluating if my field has changed every single before save. So regardless if this GE context gets passed down further down the chain and it is updated and saved itself, this will reevaluate. So I like to do just the clear, easy GE records dot remove and the field name. So with your temporary fields too, you're going to want like a good unique name for it. I have come up. This is kind of copying off of Aptify as ones you might see in there, but what I have come up with is sort of my naming scheme for it is underscore X, a descriptive name, and then underscore org acronym. And this has worked out pretty dang good for me over the years and has always, I've never had an issue with it conflicting with anything. So, okay. So we remove it. Then, this is an event definition. So this is pretty low level into the process pipeline. Never code an event handler where your actual logic stuff isn't within the try catch. Try catch. Because what happens is if you have anything in here that might cause an exception or something, you crap out the whole process pipeline essentially. So at least this way, if it doesn't execute, you can publish your error and the system still keeps running. Yes, Chris, follow your own rules. This, yes. This should be right here. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay. So then what we're doing here in our try catch, we are now looking if the business bad address, if its old value is not equal to its current value. And it's set to true. Now, a lot of you are going to be going like, why aren't you using the is dirty flag? I have just found historically the is dirty flag, for whatever reason, is not 100% accurate. That may have been the limited testing in that I have done on it and that. So your mileage may vary. I have just gotten into the habit of always getting the old value and comparing it to the current value. Now, a lot of times in these, the reason I do this is because usually these go into a variable because they're being used for other stuff down the road. This is a very simple scenario. So if this is true, then we're going to use the set add value. If you've never used set add value, it is a little different than set value because set value, if the field name doesn't exist, it doesn't do anything. Set add value, if the field name doesn't exist in the entity, it will add it as a field to the entity or to the GE, to the GE in memory. So just this context, it'll add it. And then I always use true false. Your mileage may vary in that. I haven't found anything that I needed like codes in for, so I always just do true false. for this guy. And then, of course, your exception, do your publish. I just did something basic. And then we return true. So difference being, you'll see a lot of event handlers. So this O result success is more along the lines of any event handler tied to this. If success is true, then yes, fire the event handler. If success is false, don't fire the event handler. So this is the true false just to do I fire the event handler or do I not fire the event handler? Which is why in this scenario, I'm just saying true here instead of actually returning the true false value, because down the road, you might end up having, 15, 16 of these or whatever this may be. You have way more than one. And instead of then going, if any of these are true, then go true and all that. This is just true. And then your event handler process flow would then do the check going, is this actually set to true? Okay, yes, then next, if not, don't. So anyways, that's how easy it is. That's the script. So all we're doing again, stage one, remove it because this is being executed on before save. So we start clean. We do our evaluation on our field. And then if our evaluation is true, we then set add. So we add this temporary field and we set it to the value we need. In this case, true. Okay. That's our event definition. Woohoo. That's stage one. Okay. Oh, and the most important part to all of this, and something to keep in mind always. This is before save. I've got this on the before save, and I have this on an entity. Before save processes on every single GE record. So this event, even without having any event handlers tied to it, this is now going to execute on every single person save. So very key to remember, a before save event definition that is tied to an entity, regardless if there are event handlers tied to it, is always going to execute for that entity. So just remember that. So for performance and all that, just be a little careful what you're doing in here. If you're doing big, massive lookups for stuff to tell if something's supposed to fire or not, this probably isn't where that should be going. Those lookups should be going on the after save, maybe in an asynchronous process and all that. This should be quick, simple, clean stuff. Event definitions should be something that flags event handlers to go yes, no. They should be short, quick, clean, and precise. As much as you can get them. I know that's not always the scenario, but so remember that because this is before save on persons, this is now going to fire every single time the save happens. Okay, great. So now we've got before save. So so that being said, I don't need an event handler here. I don't need a process flow to happen at all because this is just going to fire and set the temporary field regardless. Okay, great. We've got that event handler. Okay. But now we need the actual after save. So what are we going to do for the after save? So I've got, where am I here? I have, where's my identity? I have another event definition. That's before save, after save. Okay. So now that we've set our temporary flag, and you don't have to do this in an event definition. Let me go through this and then I'm going to tell you exactly why I did this in an event definition. So this is our after save. So person's after save, checking for the bad flag. Again, entity, after save, person. And then what this script is doing it's setting the success if bad address exists. So I like using the fields index of and then greater than equal to 0 to tell if this field even exists, because this is a temporary field. So it may or may not exist on our GE. And then because we're doing true false for this flag, if it's true. So if that's true, result is success. If it's not true, then it's false. So if this is true, execute any event handler tied to it, else don't execute them. Okay, cool. But why did I do this in an event handler? Well, the primary reason in this scenario is I don't want to run the process flow off the event handler every single time to evaluate if this bad address is set. So you've got two options here. You could just have a standard old after save and tie it to your process flow. And the very first thing that process flow does is essentially this check. Totally fine if you're doing stuff synchronously. Not really that big of a deal. If you're doing stuff asynchronously, well, that means every single person save is getting that process flow sent to the async server. Okay, now you're bloating your async server with a whole bunch of runs that it needs to do. So, this is why I prefer to do an event definition here if we can, because now the only thing that's going to go to the async server are the ones where the bad address flag exists. So, something to consider. And it depends on what you need to do to actually determine yes, no. Not so much a big deal when stuff is synchronous if you're still using the desktop application more than anything, and your SSO for Aptify Web, not so much. But once you get into doing stuff to the async server, this is a great way to control, do I actually pass it to the async server or not, which can help with the bloat on your async server. So now that we've got this event definition, we can go over and we can actually create our event handler. So on persons, we've got our after save. And then if you watch my previous video, we're going to send the magic link notification. And in this case, this process flow just takes in the person ID, which just this is a really really simple process flow. Yes, I do have it open. Process flow, just doing a little rule script, and all it does, I like coding. Sorry, goes and gets the message template details, and then just creates a message run, and sends and saves it to approved. So then it sends the message run, and that is how you set up temporary flags that can be passed over into your after save events to know if a value has changed. So, quick recap. Step 1, we create a before save event definition that runs on the entity. So that means this is going to fire every single save period. Step 1, clear the flag. So we start clean, do our evaluation, set flag if needed, success true. Step 2, in this scenario, we're going to create an after save event, which evaluates, does the flag exist and is it true? Which then gives us, our event handler to yes, no, execute the process flow. And there you have it. while it's kind of interesting, this is not baked into Aptify. There have been some talks in the Aptify developer roundtable of something like this should be baked in and should be a little bit more metadata driven based. Um, if you really want to just build in a bulk sort of just do it, uh, be very careful doing this. I haven't actually done this on production to see if there's any performance and all that. You could just loop through fields on the GE record and just do this for each one and then add these values if you really want to. That's a little overkill. I probably wouldn't go that far and all that, but you can do stuff. It's pretty simple and basic. Once you do it once or twice, you're all good. So there you are, friends. Create event definition, add your flag, access your flag from another event definition, which tells your event handler to execute or not. We'll catch you in the next video.